Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Daniel McGuire here, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about kind of UCI's adjustment to distance learning due to the whole situation. So we're going to talk about the kind of structure of a lot of the courses. A lot of people have been asking in the comment section, how does the classroom structure look if they're going to continue this until fall? And I think they just kind of announced that most California universities are going to be distant learning at least through the end of this year, so that includes the fall term. So I'm going to describe all of that, kind of my opinions, kind of show what I've been able to how I've been able to get adjusted to it, and so on and so forth. So be sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and any further questions you might have, be sure to leave them in the comment section and I'll try to address them in a future video. So let's get to it. So quick disclaimer, I'm only taking my GE courses this quarter. So a lot of the online distance learning isn't really impacting me because a lot of the professors are making the course load very straightforward. It's like you have a weekly quiz and then you have a paper, or weekly quiz and then you have a discussion board post. So it's that's really what a lot of my grade is based around. So it's not really as in-depth as it normally would have been if I had been taking my engineering or my STEM level courses where you have homeworks, quizzes, midterms, and the final. I currently don't have any finals. It's all kind of lumped into the grades with the quizzes and the weekly assignments. So that's kind of the path that you would kind of anticipate for the GEs to still kind of remain that way, potentially, where you don't have a final, but they weigh everything else to outweigh the final for your final grade. So just kind of think about that. And then I've talked to other people who have taken or are taking engineering courses this quarter, and it is substantially quote unquote easier because the finals aren't as heavily weighed. So a lot of your grade does come from homeworks and weekly assignments. And I think a lot of the professors and a lot of the administration is more understanding through these times. So they're not trying to bog you down with work. It's kind of just exactly what you're going to need to know from the course, what you're going to need to take from it and move on with it. So that's kind of what I've been hearing a lot of my professors, or a lot of other people's professors have been saying to them is, initially they gave them an intense amount of workload, what they would normally expect for the class. But then as they've kind of been transitioning more towards the distant learning and kind of seeing how it's really going to work with the TAs and the students, they've been kind of pulling the reins back on some of the assignments, whether that be, making the final, worth a lot less, whether that be making quizzes worth more, whether that be having less homework assignments or making the weekly quizzes easier. That's kind of one thing that a lot of professors are trying to do, is they're trying to accommodate, not necessarily make the class easy so everybody passes, but they are definitely trying to make it more accessible, more direct to the point. And, if you have the information down and you demonstrate it within these few lessons or these few examples or these few tests, then that's enough to be able to pass the class. So 100%, obviously, your education is going to come online. So you're going to need a pretty decently fast computer for distant learning. I mean, in general, but I think, having a reliable computer is very essential at this point. I've had my computer since freshman year, and I don't think I've had that many problems with it. Some things kind of just wear and tear, obviously, like the battery's starting to get a little bit less efficient as it once was. But definitely, I would recommend getting a pretty reliable computer for distant learning, because you are going to have a lot of your assignments on here. You're not going to be able to rely as heavily in going in person and asking questions. And another thing that I would suggest for that is to kind of have reliable and high-speed internet, because you are going to be taking quizzes online or exams online, and if you don't have the internet, then you could crash. I know that happened to me once. I just finished an exam or a quiz, and I was really fortunate. I just finished a quiz, and one of my neighbors tripped one of the Wi-Fi cables and pulled the whole connection towards the internet, and the whole Wi-Fi was out for 4 hours. And I had just finished the exam, so I was really fortunate that didn't happen mid-exam. But obviously, at that situation, I think the professor may or may not understand that and kind of give you some leeway, maybe let you retake the test. But just to avoid all that situation, try and have high-speed, reliable internet. And that's really going to be your best bet to succeeding in the courses, because you are going to be able to meet with your professors via Zoom or via another type of conferencing, where you're able to talk to them or your TAs. So I would recommend a reliable laptop and high-speed internet. So UCI transitioned to this rather early. I think they were the first school to kind of say we're just fully online early March, versus other schools were still kind of weary about it. UCI just went all in and said we're all online, we'll figure it out as we go. And they added this, I don't know if they're going to do it for the fall quarter, but I know for the spring quarter, it's they allow you to decide whether you want to pass, no pass your class up until the last week before finals, which is very unique because usually you have until the second week traditionally to decide whether you're going to have your classes be pass, no pass. So now having that transition to being the last week, you can kind of really see if you're struggling in the class and you just really want to pass, you don't care about the letter grade, and then you just go for that, or vice versa. If you have the no pass but you're doing good, or you had the pass no pass but you're doing good and you want the letter grade, they could accommodate that. As I said, I don't know how they're going to do it for the fall quarter. They haven't really announced that, or even for the summer course or the summer quarter for that matter. They haven't really announced what they're going to want to do with that. So it's definitely interesting to see if they're still going to allow that, because that is like a pretty good incentive, or not a good incentive, but it's a good fallback to students with their GPA, because the pass no pass doesn't impact your GPA. So if you have a high GPA, it won't impact you through taking these courses in a very unconventional manner. So I quickly touched on the aspect of, the way the grades are broken down, and a lot of the professors are really, like I said, taking away the emphasis on the final and taking the emphasis away on a lot of exams, and they're trying to find other ways to layer your grades. So like I said, with me, for personal experience from the classes I'm taking, my sociology and global studies classes, they're split right down the middle, 50-50. So it's 50% for the quizzes and 50% for paper, and then 50% for quizzes and 50% for discussion participation. So, not the hardest kind of situation to kind of get a good grade on. And I don't necessarily think they're going to curve the class, which, it's pretty straightforward. I don't really see a need for them to curve the class, but definitely it's a lot different. I know one of the classes I was going to take, it was traditionally 20% for the quizzes, 40% for the papers, and then 40% for the final. So that final's completely gone, so they kind of reworked the grade. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see if future syllabuses or syllabi go out for the fall quarter, where I think professors are going to have a better grip on this. They're going to be able to have gone at least a quarter, maybe two, depending if they teach in the summer or not, with this type of situation going on. So they might be better prepared. You might be expecting a little bit more workload because they are going to be able to facilitate it easier. So the fall term is still kind of up in the air in terms of how that's going to be structured. So it's definitely a interesting point to try and take home, where right now I think it's generally easier than it normally would be in person, but it's all kind of up in the air for the fall quarter or the fall semester, because you don't really necessarily know if the professor is going to just be like, hey, like now we have a grip on this, I can deliver the information more efficiently, so get ready. Lastly, I would say communication is going to be the most important part, or is the most important part of this distant learning, because you're not in class and you can't really ask the professor a question just on the spot. It does make it a lot more challenging in terms of not being able to ask them. Some professors do have live Zoom meetings where you have the whole class there and everybody, you can kind of ask questions, but it's still kind of like, it's still really hard to really ask a question during that Zoom meeting, because you can kind of have multiple questions and overlap, and it just kind of throws it a lot off, especially in a large kind of 100 to 200 person lecture. So that really throws it off. But it's also interesting when some professors only upload pre-recorded lectures, or they have like prior years and they just upload that and you just have to look at that. That's also difficult, because you can ask a question live in the moment, but then once you finish the lecture, you may forget about your question and you can't ask it to the professor. So I think communication with your professors is the most important part. If you seriously do have a question or a concern, is to email them right away. You're not going to have that luxury of being in class and just asking them right after class, hey, for the exam, like this question, and you're not going to have that. You're going to have to take it upon yourself to go about them and emailing them about that. All right, so that's it for today's video. If you have any further questions, be sure to leave them in the comment section. It is a tough time, I know, for a lot of incoming students, whether that be transfer or freshmen. So be sure to ask them. I'll try and provide another video on updated questions if you have them. So thank you for watching.